Hey YouTube, well, we're back here with my Vixen train horn. Another little issue I just had happen. Got my new pop-off valve installed, and I decided that I wanted to drain the water off the tank, just because I haven't done it yet, and see if there was any, which there wasn't really. But the problem that happened was I opened the drain here and immediately felt a little bunch of chunks blow out and hit me in the hand as I was opening this. Anybody who's drained water off a compressor before knows that it does form little pieces of ice that will blow out. So I didn't think nothing of it until I went to go shut this and air was leaking off. So what had happened was the O-ring just was totally disintegrated. So all I can figure is it must have been a very poor quality O-ring, or a very old O-ring that was all dry rotted, or whatever the case may be. It wasn't very good. So luckily I have a good supply of O-rings laying around, and I found one that fits really well. And you'll notice that this O-ring is not rounded. If I can get my camera to focus, there we go. It's squared off. So let me slap this thing on here and I'll show you how it fits. Alright, so as you can see, it actually fits on here quite well. It's very snug, and it sits on it really well, and it seats very well. Yeah, it's tight and it's sealed off. So not sure if these are what these O-rings were actually made for. It was just a little bag that I had in my stockpile. I always keep O-rings, extra O-rings from everything. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wire wheel this. I'm going to get this old tape off and get this thing put back in and sealed. Again, hopefully I don't run into the big problem like I did before, where I had to uninstall and reinstall all these components many times to get them to seal. So let me get this put back in and we'll check her out. And also, in case anyone's asking or wondering, I did try a standard round O-ring, and I really didn't like how it fit. Whenever I would tighten this up, the O-ring would tend to want to bulge out somewhere. So yes, I did try a regular circle O-ring, and it doesn't fit as nice as this squared off one. And there we have it. She's all done. Pump back up again. No leaks. So happy about that, but I don't know. I know there's a lot more expensive train horns out on the market, so I think the price point is pretty good. So I can't really complain too much. I just think that if they took just a little bit more time, and mainly just made sure these threads were clean, that they blocked it off during the powder coat process or whatever, to make the threads clean, that would eliminate a lot of aggravation, hunting down leaks, having to soap everything. But you can get it right. Another thing I wanted to point out, because the excuse me, the instructions mention, installing this system underneath your hood of your vehicle. I don't know about any of y'all, unless you have like an old square body Chevy or something, old Ford. I don't know if anybody's going to have room for this big old tank and compressor up underneath the hood of their vehicle, but this thing does get pretty daggum warm. The upper cylinder here and this whole braided hose acts like a huge heat sink. I mean, right now at the end of this hose, it's warm. Not as warm as up here, because all I did was fill the tank up one time from empty. But I have used this thing. It ran probably for a continuous 15 minutes, which is past its duty cycle description, but I decided it'd be okay because it says there's thermal overload on the motor. So I figured if it got too hot that it would shut down, and it didn't. But it was screaming hot by the time I was done. You know, I've aired up 4 completely empty trailer tires with it, and it did really well. I was pleased with it. But my point of all of that is this is out here in the open where air can circulate and get to it. If this is underneath your engine, the hood of your car, and your engine bay, this thing's already going to be piping hot. It's going to be, you know, 210, 230 degrees just hanging out there, not even running. So if you run this thing for 10 minutes, you know, I'm not sure how long the thing's going to last, being as it's oilless with that kind of heat. So, in my opinion, even though the manufacturer suggests putting this under the hood of your vehicle, I think the temperature is going to be just too high for that. Because, I mean, as you can see, it, you know, a duty cycle, it's got a 100% duty cycle at 100 psi, which is kind of misleading because when I bought this, it told me it had a 100% duty cycle, but it didn't say at 100 psi. You know, this thing's working, it cuts on at 170, I believe, and shuts off at 200. So, you know, that duty cycle is actually cut down to 50%. For those of you who don't know what a duty cycle is, it's 10 minute. A duty cycle is considered 10 minutes of constant work time. So if you have a 100% duty cycle, then that means that setup is rated to run for a continuous 10 minutes before you need to shut it off and let it cool down. So 50% duty cycle would be 5 minutes. 150% duty cycle would be 15 minutes, and so on and so forth. But I haven't actually ran into any issues with overworking it thus far. But we'll see how it goes. But that's just my advice, is I don't think I would put this underneath the hood of my car. I'd rather put it somewhere where it's out in the open, it can get some air going to it. So that's it. Part 2 of the review of Vixen train horn.